Marcus thought he was hiring just another housekeeper. The woman who answered his desperate ad wore ankle-length dresses and spoke in whispers. She never sat down, never removed her coat, never explained why she flinched when doors slammed. But she saved his asthmatic son's life on her first day. That should have been enough. It wasn't. When Caleb's breathing turned critical and Riley rushed to help, her dress caught on the bathroom fixture. Marcus reached to free the fabric without thinking. "Please, don't lift my dress," she begged, panic flooding her voice like a dam breaking. Too late. The material lifted anyway. What Marcus discovered underneath wasn't just shocking, it was impossible, and it would force him to question everything he thought he knew about the woman living in his house. 3 months earlier, Marcus Thompson had reached his breaking point. His 6-year-old son Caleb wheezed through another sleepless night while Marcus paced the hallway outside his bedroom door. The asthma attacks were getting worse since Jennifer died. The doctors said stress could trigger episodes, but knowing that didn't make the 3 a.m. emergency room visits any easier. Mrs. Patterson, his elderly neighbor, tried to help, but at 73, she couldn't lift Caleb during his worst moments. Marcus needed someone younger, someone trained, someone who understood that his son's breathing could stop without warning. The employment agency sent 3 candidates. The first woman lasted 2 hours before Caleb's coughing fit sent her running. The second demanded hazard pay after witnessing an attack. The third never showed up at all. Marcus was ready to quit his construction job and become a full-time caregiver when Riley Bennett's application arrived. No references, no formal training. Just a handwritten note that said she understood children with breathing problems and could start immediately. She appeared at his door on a Tuesday morning, wearing a charcoal dress that brushed her ankles and a wool coat despite the 80-degree weather. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her green eyes seemed to catalogue every exit in the room before meeting his gaze. When she shook his hand, her grip was firm, but her fingers trembled slightly. Marcus noticed she positioned herself near the front door, as if ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. "I'm Riley Bennett," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're looking for help with your son?" Marcus nodded, studying her pale complexion and the way she kept glancing toward the stairs where Caleb's nebulizer hummed. She knew the sound immediately. Her shoulders relaxed just a fraction, and for the first time since entering his house, she seemed to breathe normally. Whatever experience she had with respiratory equipment, it was extensive. Caleb chose that moment to have a mild episode. The familiar wheeze drifted down from his bedroom, followed by a soft thump as he reached for his inhaler. Most people would have looked concerned or asked what they should do. Riley was already moving. She climbed the stairs 2 at a time, her long dress somehow not slowing her down. By the time Marcus caught up, she was kneeling beside Caleb's bed, her hands positioned exactly where a respiratory therapist would place them, massaging his back with practiced precision. "Breathe with me, sweetheart," she murmured to Caleb, her voice taking on a sing-song quality that seemed to calm the boy immediately. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's perfect." Caleb's breathing steadied within minutes, faster than it had since Jennifer's death. When Riley stood up, she smoothed her dress carefully, making sure the hem covered her completely. Marcus caught a glimpse of something unusual near her ankle, but the fabric fell back into place before he could identify what he'd seen. "How did you know to do that?" Marcus asked as they returned downstairs. Riley paused at the bottom step, her hand gripping the banister tighter than necessary. "Experience," she said simply. "I've cared for someone with severe respiratory issues before." The way she said someone instead of naming a relationship made Marcus curious, but something in her expression warned against pressing for details. Her eyes held the kind of pain that came from loss, the same haunted look he saw in his own mirror every morning. Riley moved into the guest room that afternoon with a single duffel bag and a small wooden box she carried like it contained something precious. She asked for no tour of the house, seemed to memorize the layout within hours, and somehow knew where Jennifer kept the emergency medical supplies without being told. When Marcus offered to order pizza for dinner, Riley declined, saying she preferred to eat later. When he suggested she make herself comfortable in the living room, she remained standing by the kitchen window, watching the street like she expected someone to arrive. The first week passed without incident. Caleb's breathing improved dramatically under Riley's care. She seemed to anticipate his attacks before they started, adjusting the humidity in his room, monitoring his activity level, and ensuring his rescue inhaler was always within reach. She cooked simple meals that somehow tasted better than anything Marcus had managed since becoming a single father. She cleaned without being asked and never complained about the long hours or Caleb's occasional tantrums when the medication made him irritable. But her behavior grew stranger with each passing day. Riley never sat down, even during meals. She perched on the edge of chairs for brief moments before standing again, as if sitting caused her physical discomfort. She refused Marcus's offers to buy her more comfortable clothes, insisting the long dresses were fine. Most puzzling of all, she never used the upstairs bathroom, always walking to the powder room on the main floor, even when carrying Caleb to bed after a bath. When Marcus asked if something was wrong with the upstairs facilities, Riley's face flushed, and she mumbled something about preferring privacy. The truth began unraveling on a humid Thursday evening in late September. Marcus returned from work to find Mrs. Patterson waiting on his front porch, her face creased with worry. "I saw Riley at the pharmacy today," she said without preamble. She was picking up a prescription, but the name on the bottle wasn't Bennett. It was Crawford. Riley Crawford. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Why would Riley use a different last name? Mrs. Patterson leaned closer, lowering her voice. "The pharmacist mentioned she's been buying insulin. Heavy doses, Marcus, for months." That night, after Caleb was asleep, Marcus confronted Riley in the kitchen. She was standing at the sink, washing dishes that didn't need washing, her movements mechanical and repetitive. "We need to talk," he said, and Riley's hands stilled on the plate she'd been scrubbing. "About what?" she asked, but her voice carried the weight of someone who knew exactly what was coming. Marcus pulled out a chair, gesturing for her to sit. Riley remained standing. "Why are you using the name Crawford at the pharmacy?" he asked gently. Riley's shoulders sagged, as if an invisible weight had settled on them. "Crawford was my married name," she said, her voice barely audible. "I couldn't bear to change it back after—" She trailed off, but Marcus caught the implication. "After your husband died," he guessed. Riley shook her head slowly. "After my daughter died." The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Marcus felt his chest tighten as understanding dawned. "The insulin," he said. "It's for a diabetic child." "Her name was Mia," Riley whispered, setting down the plate with trembling hands. "Type 1 diabetes since she was 4 years old. I was her primary caregiver after her father left us." She turned to face Marcus, and he saw tears threatening to spill from her green eyes. "She died 8 months ago, diabetic ketoacidosis. We were at the park, and she seemed fine, but then suddenly—" Riley's voice cracked. "I couldn't get her to the hospital fast enough. I failed her." Marcus stepped closer, wanting to offer comfort, but Riley backed away until she hit the counter. "I still buy her insulin," she continued, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "I know it sounds crazy, but I can't stop. Every month I go to the pharmacy and pick up her prescription, telling myself that maybe I made a mistake. Maybe she's still alive somewhere and needs it. The pharmacist thinks I'm buying it for myself, so I use my married name to avoid questions." The pieces were starting to fit together, but Marcus sensed there was more to Riley's story. "Is that why you're so good with Caleb?" he asked. "Because you cared for Mia." Riley nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "When I saw his attack that first day, all I could think was, not again. I couldn't let another child suffer when I might be able to help. But Marcus..." She looked up at him with desperate eyes. "What if I fail him too? What if my presence here puts him in danger?" Before Marcus could respond, they heard a crash from upstairs, followed by Caleb's panicked voice calling for help. Both adults rushed towards the stairs, but Riley reached Caleb's room first. The boy was on the floor beside his overturned nightstand, gasping for air while his nebulizer hummed uselessly on the carpet. His rescue inhaler had rolled under the bed, just out of reach. Riley dropped to her knees, her dress pooling around her as she tried to retrieve the medication. "I can't reach it," Caleb wheezed, his lips starting to turn blue. Riley stretched further under the bed, but her dress caught on the metal bed frame. As she tried to pull free, the fabric rode up slightly, and Marcus glimpsed something that made no sense. Where Riley's left leg should have been, he saw the gleam of metal and carbon fiber, a prosthetic limb. The revelation hit him like a physical blow, but there was no time to process what he'd seen. Caleb needed help immediately. Marcus dove under the bed from the other side, grabbing the inhaler and quickly administering 2 puffs while Riley supported Caleb's back. The medication worked within minutes, returning color to the boy's face and easing his breathing. "There we go," Riley murmured, her voice shaking slightly. "You're okay now, sweetheart. Just breathe slowly." Caleb nodded, resting against her shoulder while his breathing returned to normal. Marcus watched them together, his mind reeling from what he'd discovered. After Caleb was settled back in bed, Marcus and Riley returned to the kitchen in silence. She immediately began tidying up, her movements more agitated than usual. "Riley," Marcus said softly, "about what I saw upstairs." She froze, her back still turned to him. "I don't know what you think you saw," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Marcus moved closer, careful not to crowd her. "Your leg," he said gently. "It's prosthetic, isn't it?" Riley's composure finally cracked. She gripped the edge of the counter so tightly her knuckles went white. "Please don't ask me about it," she whispered. "I can't. I'm not ready to..." Marcus reached out to touch her shoulder, but she flinched away. "I need to go," she said suddenly, spinning around to face him. "This was a mistake. I should never have come here." She started towards the door, but Marcus blocked her path. "Riley, wait. You don't have to explain anything you're not ready to share. You don't understand," Riley said, her voice rising with panic. "If people know about my leg, they'll ask questions. They'll want to know how it happened, why I'm really here, what I'm running from." She pushed past Marcus, heading for the stairs. "I need to pack. I'll be gone in the morning." Marcus followed her, his heart racing. "What about Caleb? He needs you." Riley paused at the bottom of the stairs, her hand gripping the banister. "He needs someone who won't put him in danger." "Danger from what?" Marcus pressed. "Riley, whatever you're afraid of, we can handle it together." She turned to look at him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that went beyond grief or embarrassment. It was genuine fear. "You have no idea what you're offering," she said quietly. "My past isn't just sad, Marcus. It's dangerous. There are people who might come looking for me, and when they do..." She shook her head. "I won't let Caleb get caught in that crossfire." Before Marcus could respond, headlights swept across the front windows. A car was pulling into his driveway at nearly midnight, its engine cutting through the suburban silence. Riley went rigid, her face draining of color. "They found me," she whispered, backing away from the windows. "I have to go, now." Marcus looked outside and saw a black sedan with tinted windows idling in his driveway. 2 figures sat in the front seats, but he couldn't make out their faces in the darkness. "Who are they?" Marcus asked, but Riley was already moving. She ran upstairs with surprising speed despite her prosthetic, and Marcus heard her throwing belongings into her bag. The car doors slammed outside, followed by heavy footsteps on his front porch. When the doorbell rang, it sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet house. Marcus hesitated, unsure whether to answer or pretend no one was home. The bell rang again, more insistently this time. Marcus opened the door to find two men in dark suits standing on his porch. They looked like federal agents or private investigators, with the kind of serious expressions that suggested this wasn't a social call. "Evening, sir," the taller one said, flashing a badge too quickly for Marcus to read. "We're looking for a woman named Riley Crawford. We have reason to believe she might be staying here." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. "I don't know anyone by that name." He lied, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. The second man stepped forward, pulling out a photograph. She might be going by Riley Bennett now, about 5'6", auburn hair, green eyes, walks with a slight limp. Marcus glanced at the photo and felt his heart sink. It was definitely Riley, though she looked thinner and more frightened than the woman he knew. "What do you want with her?" he asked, trying to buy time. The men exchanged glances. "That's confidential," the first man said, "but I can tell you she's wanted for questioning in connection with a serious crime." Upstairs, Marcus heard a soft thump, followed by the sound of a window opening. Riley was escaping through Caleb's bedroom, probably climbing down the oak tree that grew close to the house. He needed to keep these men distracted long enough for her to get away. "Look, gentlemen," Marcus said, stepping onto the porch and pulling the door closed behind him. "I work construction. I leave for job sites before dawn and don't get home until dark. If someone was staying here without my knowledge, I probably wouldn't know it." The men weren't buying his act. "Mr. Thompson," the taller one said, and Marcus realized they already knew his name. "We have surveillance photos of this woman entering your house 3 weeks ago. We know she's been living here." Marcus felt trapped. "Okay, fine. Yes, I hired her as a housekeeper, but she left yesterday. Said she found a better position across town." It wasn't entirely a lie. Riley was definitely leaving, just not for the reasons he'd claimed. "Did she mention where she was going?" the second man pressed. Marcus shook his head. "She was pretty secretive. Kept to herself. Didn't talk much about her past." That much was certainly true. The men studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "Mr. Thompson, this woman is dangerous. If she contacts you again, you need to call us immediately." They handed him a business card with only a phone number printed on it. No names, no agency identification. After the men left, Marcus waited 20 minutes before going back inside. The house felt different now, charged with tension and unanswered questions. He climbed the stairs to Caleb's room and found the window open, cool night air stirring the curtains. On the nightstand, Riley had left her small wooden box. Marcus picked it up carefully, noticing how light it felt. Inside, he found a tiny insulin vial, a child's medical bracelet engraved with Mia Crawford, and a folded piece of paper. The note was written in Riley's careful handwriting. "Marcus, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. Mia was killed in a car accident, but it wasn't random. Her father, my ex-husband Derek, was a police officer with connections to some very dangerous people. When I tried to leave him, he threatened to hurt Mia. I took her and ran, but he found us. The accident was meant for me. Mia died because I couldn't protect her. Now Derek's friends want me to pay for his death. I never meant to put you and Caleb in danger. Please tell Caleb I'm sorry I had to leave. Take care of each other." "Ah." Marcus sank into Caleb's desk chair, his mind reeling. Riley hadn't just been a grieving mother hiding from painful memories. She'd been running from people who blamed her for a police officer's death. The men who'd come to his door weren't federal agents. They were Derek's associates, looking for revenge. And now they knew Riley had been staying here, which meant they might come back. Marcus felt sick thinking about how close danger had come to his son. The next morning, Caleb woke up asking for Riley. "Where is she, Daddy? She always helps me with my breathing treatment." Marcus sat on the edge of his son's bed, struggling to find words that would make sense to a 6-year-old. "Riley had to go away, buddy. She had some grown-up problems she needed to handle." Caleb's face crumpled. "But she didn't say goodbye. She promised she would always say goodbye." Marcus pulled his son into a hug, feeling his own eyes sting with unshed tears. For the next 2 weeks, Marcus hired a series of temporary caregivers while searching for a permanent replacement. None of them understood Caleb's condition the way Riley had. The boy's attacks became more frequent and severe without her intuitive care. He asked about her constantly, and Marcus found himself making excuses that sounded increasingly hollow. "She'll come back when her problems are solved," he told Caleb, but privately he doubted they would ever see Riley again. Then, on a rainy Tuesday night, Marcus heard a soft knock at his back door. He opened it to find Riley standing on his porch, soaked to the skin and shivering. She looked thinner than before, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said, her teeth chattering. "But I couldn't stop thinking about Caleb. How is he?" Marcus pulled her inside without hesitation. "He's been asking for you every day. His breathing has gotten worse since you left." Riley closed her eyes as if in pain. "I was afraid of that. Stress makes everything worse for kids with asthma." She looked around the kitchen, and Marcus realized she was checking for signs that the men had returned. "They came looking for you," he said quietly. "2 men in suits. They said you were wanted for questioning about a crime." Riley nodded wearily. "Derek's death. They think I killed him, but it was self-defense. He was trying to hurt Mia, and I—" She shuddered. "The car accident happened during the struggle. He died, but so did she." Marcus guided Riley to a chair, noting how carefully she positioned her prosthetic leg. "Tell me everything," he said. "I want to understand what we're dealing with." Riley looked up at him with surprise. "We?" she repeated. "Marcus, you can't get involved in this. These people don't just ask questions, they make problems disappear permanently." Marcus sat down across from her. "You saved my son's life, multiple times. Whatever happened in your past, I know you're not a killer." Over the next hour, Riley told him the whole story. Derek Crawford had been a corrupt police officer involved with drug dealers and money laundering. When Riley discovered what he was doing and threatened to report him, he'd become violent. He said if I ever tried to leave or expose him, he'd make sure Mia paid the price. She explained. So I stayed and endured it, thinking I was protecting her. But when he started getting more unstable, more paranoid, I realized staying was even more dangerous. "That's when you ran?" Marcus asked. Riley nodded. "I took Mia and drove straight to the FBI field office, but Derek had connections there too. Someone tipped him off before we could even give our statement. He found us in the parking lot." Her voice grew quiet. "There was a struggle. Derek tried to grab the steering wheel while I was driving. We hit a tree at 40 miles per hour. The impact broke my leg so badly they had to amputate. Mia—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "For all of it." Riley squeezed his fingers gratefully. Derek died at the scene, but his partners claimed I'd murdered him. They said I'd lured him to that location specifically to kill him and make it look like an accident. The local police were too corrupt to investigate properly, so I ran before they could arrest me. She looked down at their joined hands. "I've been moving from town to town ever since, using my maiden name and trying to stay invisible." "Why did you answer my ad?" Marcus asked. "You could have kept running." Riley was quiet for a long moment. Because when I read about Caleb's asthma, I saw an opportunity to use my experience for something good instead of just surviving. Mia taught me so much about managing chronic illness, about reading the signs and preventing emergencies. I thought maybe I could honor her memory by helping another child. She looked up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. I never expected to care about you both so much. A sound from upstairs made them both freeze. Caleb was having another attack. Riley was on her feet instantly, moving toward the stairs despite Marcus's protests. Riley, if those men come back and find you here... She paused at the bottom of the staircase. Then we'll deal with it together, she said, echoing his words from earlier. But right now, Caleb needs help, and I'm the best person to give it to him. Marcus followed her upstairs, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and admiration. They found Caleb sitting up in bed, his breathing labored but not critical. Riley immediately began the massage technique that had worked before, her hands moving with practiced confidence despite the stress of the situation. "Hey there, sweetheart," she murmured to the boy. "I'm back." Caleb's eyes widened with relief and joy. "Riley, Daddy said you had to go away, but I knew you'd come back." Riley smiled through her tears. "I missed you too, baby. Now let's get you breathing better, okay?" Within minutes, Caleb's attack had subsided. As Riley tucked him back into bed, the boy grabbed her hand. "Don't leave again," he pleaded. "I breathe better when you're here." Riley looked helplessly at Marcus, torn between her desire to stay and her fear of putting them in danger. "I'll try not to," she promised, though they both knew how impossible that might be. Caleb smiled and closed his eyes, finally peaceful for the first time in weeks. Downstairs, Marcus and Riley sat at the kitchen table making plans. "I can't keep running forever," Riley said. "Sooner or later, they're going to catch up with me, and when they do..." Marcus interrupted her. "Then we make sure you're not alone when it happens. We get evidence of Derek's corruption, prove you were acting in self-defense, and expose his partners for what they really are." Riley stared at him. "That's incredibly dangerous. These people have killed before." "So we're careful," Marcus said. "We document everything, make copies, involve people they can't corrupt or intimidate." He pulled out his laptop. Derek's case must have left a paper trail somewhere. FBI reports, hospital records, witness statements. If we can gather enough evidence... Riley shook her head. "I tried that before. They've covered their tracks too well." Marcus looked at her steadily. "You tried it alone. This time you won't be." They spent the rest of the night researching Derek Crawford's background and the circumstances of his death. Marcus used his construction contacts to access public records that might have been overlooked. Riley provided details about Derek's associates and their criminal activities. Slowly, a picture began to emerge of a conspiracy much larger than either of them had realized. Derek hadn't just been a corrupt cop. He'd been part of a network that included prosecutors, judges, and federal agents. As dawn broke, they had the foundation of a case that might actually work. "It's not enough yet," Riley said, studying their notes. "But it's a start." Marcus nodded, feeling more hopeful than he had in weeks. "We'll keep gathering evidence, and when we have enough, we'll take it to someone who can't be bought." Riley looked at him with something approaching wonder. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." Marcus thought about the question seriously. "Because Caleb loves you. Because you've made our lives better in every way that matters. And because..." He hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Because I think I'm falling in love with you." Riley's eyes widened, and for a moment Marcus worried he'd said too much too soon. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. "Even knowing about my past, about the danger, especially knowing about it," Marcus said, "you've survived things that would have destroyed most people, and you're still brave enough to care about others. That's not someone I want to lose." Riley's eyes filled with tears, but this time they seemed to be tears of relief rather than grief. "I thought I'd lost the ability to love anyone again after Mia died," she whispered. "But being here with you and Caleb, it's like remembering how to breathe." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of multiple cars pulling into the driveway. Marcus looked out the window and felt his blood run cold. 4 black sedans had surrounded his house, and armed men were getting out of each vehicle. "They brought backup this time," Riley said, her voice surprisingly calm. "Marcus, take Caleb and go out the back. There's still time for you to get away." Marcus shook his head firmly. "We're not running. Not anymore." Instead, Marcus did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone and began recording a video message. "If you're watching this, my name is Marcus Thompson, and the woman with me is Riley Crawford. We have evidence that her ex-husband Derek Crawford was a corrupt police officer involved in drug trafficking and money laundering. The men outside our house right now are his associates, and they're here to silence the only witness to their crimes." He handed the phone to Riley. "Send this to every news outlet and law enforcement agency you can think of." Riley's fingers flew over the phone's keyboard as heavy footsteps surrounded the house. "Done," she said, looking up at Marcus with admiration. "That was brilliant." Marcus smiled grimly. Sometimes the best defense is making sure everyone knows you're under attack. A bullhorn crackled outside, and a voice demanded that Riley come out with her hands visible. "They're not even pretending to be legitimate anymore," Riley observed. "Riley Crawford," the voice continued. "You have 60 seconds to exit the building, or we're coming in." Marcus grabbed Riley's hand. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know that having you in our lives has been worth every risk." Riley squeezed his fingers tightly. "I love you too," she said simply. "Both of you." They could hear Caleb stirring upstairs, awakened by the commotion outside. The front door exploded inward as armed men rushed into the house. Marcus and Riley raised their hands, but Marcus spoke loudly enough for his phone to pick up the audio. "We're unarmed civilians. This is being recorded and broadcast live." The lead man hesitated, clearly not expecting this level of preparation. "Turn off the camera," he demanded. Marcus shook his head. "It's already uploaded to multiple servers. The whole world is watching now." For several tense minutes, the situation remained at a standstill. Then sirens began wailing in the distance. Real police sirens, growing closer by the second. Riley's live broadcast had worked. "Sounds like you gentlemen are about to have some explaining to do," Marcus said calmly. The armed men looked at each other uncertainly. They'd clearly expected this to be a quick, quiet operation, not a public spectacle with federal backup arriving. The legitimate FBI agents who responded to Riley's broadcast were led by Agent Sarah Mitchell, a woman who'd been investigating Derek Crawford's network for months without knowing Riley was still alive. "Ms. Crawford," she said as EMTs checked Riley and Marcus for injuries. "We've been looking for you. Your testimony could be the key to bringing down this entire operation." Riley looked skeptical. "How do I know you're really FBI and not more of Derek's people?" Agent Mitchell smiled and handed Riley a file folder. "Because I have Derek's complete financial records, wiretapped conversations with his associates, and evidence of at least 12 murders they committed to protect their operation. We've been building this case for 2 years, but we needed someone with first-hand knowledge to testify." Riley opened the folder and gasped. "You have everything. Bank transfers, meeting locations, even photos of Derek with the drug dealers. We had everything except a living witness." Agent Mitchell corrected. "Derek's partners made sure everyone else who could testify against them met with unfortunate accidents. You're the only person left who can put them away permanently." Riley looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "It's time to stop running," he said quietly. "For Mia, for Caleb, for all the other families these people have hurt. The legal proceedings took 8 months, but when they were finished, Derek's entire network had been dismantled. 17 people were convicted on charges ranging from drug trafficking to murder, and Riley's testimony was instrumental in securing those convictions. Agent Mitchell kept her promise to protect Riley and her new family throughout the process, providing round-the-clock security and safe housing when necessary. On a warm spring morning exactly 1 year after Riley first appeared at Marcus's door, they gathered in Caleb's bedroom for a special ceremony. Riley knelt beside the boy's bed, holding a small wooden box, the same one Marcus had found after she fled. "Mia would have wanted you to have this," she told Caleb, opening the box to reveal the child's medical bracelet. "She was very brave, just like you." Caleb examined the bracelet carefully. "Will you tell me more stories about her?" he asked. Riley smiled, no longer feeling the sharp pain that Mia's memory used to bring. "I'd love to. She would have liked you very much." Marcus watched from the doorway as Riley helped Caleb fasten the bracelet around his wrist. The boy had been attack-free for 3 months now, his breathing stronger and more stable than it had been since Jennifer's death. That evening, after Caleb was asleep, Marcus found Riley on the back porch, watching the sunset. She'd changed out of her usual long dress into jeans and a t-shirt, something she'd only recently become comfortable doing. The prosthetic leg was visible now, but instead of hiding it, Riley seemed to have made peace with this visible reminder of her survival. "Penny for your thoughts," Marcus said, settling beside her on the porch swing. "I was thinking about second chances," Riley said, leaning against his shoulder. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. I'd lost my daughter, I was running from killers, and I couldn't imagine ever feeling safe or happy again." She gestured toward the house where Caleb slept peacefully. "Now I have a family again, a home, a future. It feels almost too good to be true." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "It's real. We're real." Riley turned to look at him, her green eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. "When you accidentally lifted my dress that first night, I thought it was the end of everything. I was sure you'd see my prosthetic and know I was damaged, broken, not worth the risk." Marcus cupped her face gently. "What I saw was a woman who'd survived the impossible and still had enough love left to save my son. That's not broken. That's miraculous." They sat in comfortable silence as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. From inside the house came the gentle hum of Caleb's humidifier and the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Normal sounds, safe sounds, the sounds of a family at peace. "So what happens now?" Riley asked. Marcus smiled, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Now we stop hiding and start living." Riley's hand flew to her mouth as Marcus opened the box to reveal a simple diamond ring. "I know we've only known each other for a year, and it's been the most complicated year either of us has ever lived," he said. "But I can't imagine my future without you in it. Will you marry me?" Riley's answer was lost in tears and laughter, and the sweet chaos of a kiss that tasted like hope, and home, and happy endings that once seemed impossible. As if summoned by the sound of celebration, Caleb appeared in the doorway, wearing his pajamas and clutching his stuffed elephant. "Are you guys getting married?" he asked sleepily. "Does that mean Riley will be my mom?" Riley looked at the boy who'd become her second chance at motherhood, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. "If you want me to be," she said softly. Caleb nodded solemnly. "Mia would like that," he said, touching the medical bracelet on his wrist. And in that moment, under a sky full of stars and surrounded by the 2 people who'd taught her how to love again, Riley Crawford Bennett Thompson knew that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that choose each other. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the words, "Please don't lift my dress," And sometimes, when you think your story is ending, it's really just beginning.